Social distancing has proven to be a technique that reduces the amount of spread during a pandemic. Social distancing, we're told, will be the new norm, or at least the norm for the near future. Well, the big question for me is, can you social distance on a cruise ship? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name's Tony. If you enjoy travel and cruising content, I would invite you to subscribe with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. Well, no doubt social distancing will be the new norm, at least in the short term. And you know what social distancing is. This is the concept where you stay at least 6 feet away from the next person to reduce the ability for the virus to jump on you in case that the person next to you is sick. Social distancing, not a new technique, something that's been used in outbreaks in the past. It helped curb the outbreak of the Spanish flu back in the 1800s, and it is shown to be effective even in today's crisis as people have isolated, as people have learned to be distant from each other. We see that the spread of the current COVID-19 virus has abated to some level. But is it the isolation? Is it the social distancing that's given us the benefit so far? Not sure. Only time will tell. But one thing that is happening is that people are starting to leave isolation. Economies are starting to restart. And at some point, the cruise business will fire back up. And every expert I've listened to said that in that new paradigm, in the new normal, social distancing practices should still be in place. For example, the state of Georgia started reopening things like hair salons and gyms. I did hear an interview with a hair salon owner. She has a sign on her door that says no mask, no entry. The ideal there is they will limit the amount of people in the hairdressing shop so that they can do social distancing. She very forthright said that there's no way to social distance between the hairstylist and the person getting the haircut, but the hairstylist would be positioned in a social distant way so that you would have pairs 6 feet apart. Just in that example, you can see the complexity of how to be social distant in industries where people are required to be close together. And you know an industry that also has that challenge? The cruise industry. It doesn't take much to come up with a list of places on a cruise ship where it's going to be challenged to be socially distant. I kept going as I started writing one after another. But let me give you a list of the places on the cruise ship that certainly will be a challenge to maintain social distancing. First off, embarkation day and debarkation day. These are places where you will see large throngs of people congregated together. Even if they stagger these things, there's still going to be hundreds of people working their way through queue lines, making their way up to counters, walking the gangway. It's going to take a lot of work to implement social distancing there. I could see maybe like a patrol that only allows people to go when the next person is 6 feet in front of them. But I do think this will add some time to embarkation and debarkation line if we're going to try to get everybody on and off the cruise ship 6 feet apart. And I've said it before, some of the most challenging moments on the cruise, embarkation, debarkation, and the muster drill. I've been on several muster drills where I've been packed together like sardines. I've been on several muster drills where my body is touching strangers. I've been on several muster drills where I've not been inches apart from someone else, much less 6 feet apart. So if the goal on the cruise ship is to be socially distant, there's going to have to be some consideration on how do you do the muster drill without keeping everybody so close together. Another one that comes to mind, the elevators. The elevators are small. If you're on an elevator with just two people, if you and your spouse get on the elevator, you are no longer socially distant. So imagine adding some strangers to that. I can't imagine there not being elevators on the cruise ship or that they're not in use. And so how do you stay socially distant on the elevator? And then you have so many public spaces, the casino. People are close together at the casino. Those machines are the craps table. That's my favorite thing in the casino. You stand elbow to elbow. Sometimes you're rubbing up with strangers at the craps table for hours at a time. How are you going to stay socially distant in the casino? How about the food places, the main dining room, the buffet? I mean, I guess they could close off certain tables, keep tables only available 6 feet apart. But at the buffet, you still got to stand in line unless they're going to have somebody monitor the line and only let one person go every 6 feet. And, I believe that most cruise lines will go away from a self-serve buffet. So you're going to have to wait to be served at the buffet. And then if you introduce a 6-foot gap between every person, it's going to be a challenge to be socially distant at the buffet. And then the main dining room full most of the time. They have 2 seatings on most cruises, full most of the time. So now if you have to leave space between each table, are they going to be able to fill up the dining rooms? Is this going to mean more dining times? It could be a challenge to be socially distanced when it comes to food on the cruise ship. And forget the food. What about the drinking? What about the lounges and the bars? What about all of those places where people gather socially, get close, get right into each other's face to have a conversation, to have a laugh, to have a drink? How are you going to keep people in the lounges and the bars 6 feet apart? Again, I guess you could set the tables apart, but all of a sudden, places that were packed on a cruise ship, where are people going to go? Another place that is packed on sea day and non-sea day alike, it's the Lido, the pool deck. If you've ever been on a pool deck on a cruise ship, you know that they lay out loungers right next to each other, one right after another, and they fill up the whole pool deck with that. And on a sea day, most of those loungers are filled with people enjoying their sea day. How are you going to disperse that crowd? I guess you could take loungers out and you could have less loungers, but that still means you got maybe more people than you have loungers. It's crazy. The hot tubs, the pools, these are all places where people are not normally 6 feet apart. How are you going to do it? There's even consideration for places like the kids club. Now, we know that demographically speaking, the kids are not necessarily getting sick from this virus, but they can be asymptomatic and they can pass the virus around. And so, maybe, little Johnny gets the virus from little Timmy, and then all of a sudden grandma and grandpa are in the hurt locker because their grandchild went to kids club. How are you going to keep kids socially distant? Kids may not necessarily understand what social distancing is. They just want to run around all snotty nose playing with their friends. And that could be a challenge on a cruise ship. Just a couple more, like Tinder Boats. That's another one. Trying to get off the cruise ship to go to a cruise port that doesn't have a dock. They put hundreds of people on these Tinder Boats sitting side by side, shoulder to shoulder, booty to booty, everybody touching each other. They'd have to make some sort of consideration for that. And then some of the events that are on cruise ships that are the most fun is when they congregate people together. I'm thinking of atrium parties and deck parties. The whole goal is to get as many people on a cruise ship shoulder to shoulder to have a coordinated dance or to just have fun together in the atrium, to share a drink, to share a laugh. How are you going to stay socially distant there? I can't imagine a deck party where everybody is in like a 6-foot bubble. So honestly, working through that list and thinking about this, I don't think that they're going to be able to enforce, encourage, promote social distancing on the cruise ship. They've only got a couple levers to pull. If you want to create more space on a cruise ship, you have to put less people on a cruise ship. I don't know the number. How many less people can the cruise line put on a cruise ship? Can you go half capacity? Can you go quarter capacity? Can the cruise line still make money in that scenario? I don't know what the number is, but I guess one of the levers they could pull is to put less people on the cruise ship. But the cruise ship's not that big. I mean, once you get a few hundred people wanting to do the same thing at the same time, social distancing is going to be a challenge to do. Think about the elevator. Think about a hot tub. I just don't see how they're going to be able to do it. At the end of the day, I do think this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for the cruise ship. If we believe that social distancing, the technique of social distancing is one of those things that have really helped abate the challenge of this virus, that's really flattened the curve, I don't think cruise lines are going to be able to use that technique on board. I mentioned it in a video the other day that I do believe that testing is going to be key for that future cruise life, the ability for people to know whether or not they have the virus, and who knows how close they need to make that to their cruise. They may need testing right at the embarkation point to make sure that asymptomatic people are not getting on the cruise ship. But I do contend that at the end of the day, the virus will make its way back onto the cruise ship. And I don't say that lightheartedly. I do think that what we're looking for when the cruise lines come back, not only a clear explanation of how they're going to try to mitigate the virus getting on the cruise ship, but also a clear plan for what the cruise lines will do if an outbreak occurs. I think most of the negative press that the cruise line had was the response to an outbreak, more so than preventing an outbreak. Some have said we should wait until there's a vaccine before cruising starts again. The reality is not everybody is going to take the vaccine. If you look at the seasonal flu vaccine, people don't take that. There is illness constantly in the world. There's illness everywhere you go, illness in theaters, illness on airplanes, illness at the mall, and there will be illness on cruise ships. The biggest thing is, how do you respond to that illness? Unfortunately, social distancing seems unreasonable on a cruise ship, and so the cruise lines are going to have to come up with creative ways, not only to mitigate the risk of the virus, but how will they respond? I do think that's the biggest question. What do you think? Social distancing viable on a cruise ship? Is there any other places that I missed from my list? Let's have a conversation below. I do think that figuring out how to keep the virus off the cruise ship is the biggest challenge for the cruise lines. I did make a video about that. Check it out here. And then the robots, the YouTube robots, think you should watch these videos. And thank you so much for stopping by. Show your support for the show by hitting that like button like a shark does chum. My name's Tony for Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido.